I thought I had finally found someone who understood the quiet parts of me. He wasn't like the others. He listened. He made coffee just the way I liked it. He didn't flinch at my anxiety or my messy apartment or the way I talked too much when I was nervous. He said he loved every inch of my chaos, and I believed him. He was a writer. That's what drew me in first. The way he spoke about pain like it was poetry. The way he told me that broken people were his favorite kind, that we bled in better colors. I laughed the first time he said that. Now I can't stop hearing it. His house was beautiful. Cold, but beautiful. Tall windows, antique bookshelves, a basement he never used. That's what he said. And I believed him. Until the night I dropped my earring on the floor beside the bookshelf and found the gap in the wood. A slit, barely noticeable. A draft coming from it. I should have left. I should have called someone. But the curiosity, it crawled in like rot under the skin. Behind that shelf was a staircase, old wood, the smell of rust. I thought maybe it was wine storage. Or maybe he'd been hiding some embarrassing collection. I prayed it was something stupid. It wasn't. The door at the bottom was metal. Cold. I had to pull hard to open it. And then I saw it. Photographs. Dozens. No. Hundreds. Lined along the wall like a grotesque gallery. Every single woman he had ever dated. Smiling. Posing. Some looked like they were asleep. Some had their eyes open. But not a single one was breathing. And in the center of the room, pinned to the wall above a bare mattress, a blank frame. No photo yet. Just my name. Written in thick red ink. I thought I was the one writing the story, but I was just a chapter, and the end was already printed. I always thought of myself as the one holding the pen. Not just a journalist, but a narrator. A storyteller who dissected other people's darkness from a safe distance, wrapping horror in clean paragraphs and clever endings. I covered war zones, missing persons, cult survivors. I wrote about things that chewed people up and spit out pieces. But I was never one of them. I was just the one documenting the blood. That was my illusion, my control. I knew what pain looked like. I thought that meant I could avoid it. He was supposed to be a story, just another profile piece. A novelist with a cult following and a suspiciously low public presence. His books were raw, too raw. Fiction, they said. But pain like that doesn't come from imagination. It leaks out from somewhere deep. So I reached out. I wanted an interview, a look inside the mind of someone who understood the edges of suffering. That was the official pitch. The unofficial truth? I was fascinated, hungry, and lonely in a way I didn't like to admit. When he responded, he was kind, thoughtful, soft-spoken, like someone who weighed every word before releasing it into the air. He said he liked my work, that he'd read everything I'd written, that he saw himself in my sentences. I blushed. God, I blushed. Like a girl, not a writer. And when he invited me to his home for a long-form interview, I told myself it was for the story, that I was in control, that I'd set the rules. I packed a notebook and a voice recorder and told my editor I'd be gone for 3 days. The house was a Victorian in the middle of nowhere. Too perfect. Too still. He opened the door and looked exactly like his words sounded. Haunted. Magnetic. Carved from quiet. The first night, he made dinner. Roasted vegetables. Lemon chicken. Wine from a bottle I couldn't pronounce. He didn't touch his food much. He watched me eat instead, asking about my childhood, my fears, the worst dream I ever had. I told him everything. I thought it was safe. Intimacy felt like connection. I mistook it for trust. The next day I never pulled out my recorder. We sat in his study and talked about grief, about how memory lies, about how pain makes you love people you should run from. He touched my wrist once, just lightly, and I swear my heart tripped over itself. I wasn't there to fall for him. But it happened anyway. Fast, quiet, like a body slipping into deep water. I was drowning, and I told myself I could swim. That night, I kissed him. I don't even remember who leaned in first. His hands were cold. He didn't touch me like someone touching another person. He touched me like someone memorizing anatomy, like he needed to know how every bone fit under the skin. I didn't stop him. I didn't want to. And when I woke up tangled in his sheets, I didn't feel scared. I felt wanted, like maybe someone finally saw me as more than a byline. But things started to twist. Subtly, I noticed that he always knew where I was in the house, that when I moved, the lights in other rooms flickered on or off. He didn't use a phone, no clocks anywhere, just this strange rhythm I couldn't place. And he never let me into the basement, said it was being renovated, that it was dangerous. The door was locked, always, except the one time I heard something, a low hum, like electricity, or breathing. I asked about it and he smiled without answering. I could have left. I told myself that again and again. I could pack my things, drive, away, never look back. But he said he'd finally agreed to do the interview, that he was ready to tell the truth. So I stayed. I waited. I wrote the first paragraph in my head, over and over. I thought I was the one with the questions, the one in charge of the narrative. Didn't realize I was just the next name on his list. Not the author of the story. Just a character, waiting for the final page to turn. It started with a sound, a low scraping, like something being dragged across concrete. It was close, too close, and it came from beneath the floorboards. I sat up in bed, heart jackhammering, skin already slick with sweat before my brain had time to catch up. The house was dead silent otherwise. No wind, no creaking walls, not even the usual distant hum of the refrigerator. Just that dragging noise. I told myself it was the pipes, maybe the water heater, anything but what I already knew in the pit of my stomach. Something was down there. Something alive. The door to the basement had always been locked. Always. But that night, the lock was undone. Not open, just waiting. As if it had never been locked at all. As if it wanted me to see. I could feel the air change when I approached it. Cooler, wetter. A stench began to rise, slow and sour, the kind of rot you can't trace but your body reacts to anyway. I stood with my hand on the knob for what felt like an hour, the silence pressing in like hands around my throat. Then I opened it. The stairs were steep and narrow, the wood warped, the walls lined with scratched plaster. There were no light switches, only a single bulb swaying from the ceiling, flickering like a dying pulse. I descended one step at a time, trying not to breathe too loudly. The smell was worse now, not just rot, copper, earth, feces. I recognized all of it. I had written about it before, in crime scenes and witness statements, but I had never been surrounded by it. At the bottom of the stairs, there was a hallway. Concrete walls. A metal door at the end, half ajar. I could hear something rhythmic behind it. Not breathing. Thudding. Wet, soft, relentless. Like someone beating a sack of meat. My body begged me to turn around, but I moved forward, because some part of me, stupid, furious curiosity, needed to know. Inside, the room was lit by red light. It buzzed from a single bulb overhead, casting shadows like bloodstains across the walls. There were photographs pinned up, hundreds of them, faces, smiling women. Some of them I recognized from his books. They weren't fictional. They were real. They had names. They had eyes I couldn't stop looking into. And next to each photo, handwritten notes, their fears, their routines, what they liked in bed, what made them cry. He had studied them, obsessed over them, loved them maybe, killed them definitely. There were boxes, sealed and labeled. One read, hair, another, clothing, another, teeth. I didn't want to look inside. I did anyway. I remember the feeling of reaching into one and feeling hair, soft and still slightly scented, like the echo of perfume clinging to death. I dropped it, backed away, gagging, shaking, eyes streaming. That's when I saw the chair, bolted to the floor, restraints on the arms, dried blood on the seat, the floor, the wall behind it, scratches on the concrete near the legs, fingernail marks. Someone had tried to claw their way free. Someone had screamed in this room, and the walls had absorbed it. Behind me, something clicked. A breath. Not mine. He was standing in the doorway. He wasn't smiling. He didn't look surprised. He looked calm. Like he had been waiting. Like this was always part of the story. He wasn't insane. That was the most terrifying part. There was no madness in his eyes, no erratic behavior to explain away the horrors he'd hidden under his floorboards. He didn't drool, didn't twitch, didn't scream into the void. He was articulate, polished, patient. A man who could speak in paragraphs and hold your gaze just long enough to make you feel safe, right before pulling the ground out from beneath your feet. That's why I loved him at first. That's why I never saw it coming. Even now, even after everything I'd seen, he looked like someone you'd trust to watch your dog while you were out of town. His face was clean-shaven, his smile soft, his clothes wrinkle-free. His voice never rose. Even when I found the room, even when I turned to him with wide, wet eyes, and the breath caught in my lungs like a scream that couldn't find its way out, he was calm, almost gentle, like a doctor about to explain a terminal diagnosis to someone who hadn't yet felt the pain. He wasn't a killer in the way people imagine killers to be. There were no outbursts, no rage, no moments of lost control. He was a collector, a curator, a predator in a world full of prey that didn't know it was being stalked. His love wasn't a thing you fell into. It was a net, and I had walked into it willingly, smiling, thinking I was the lucky one. I wasn't. I was next. I asked him silently, with just my eyes. Why? He didn't answer, but he watched me the way a child watches an ant in a jar. Curious, emotionless, vaguely fascinated by how long it can keep moving before it gives up. I saw it then, finally, beneath his skin. Not a man, but something wearing, a man like a mask. Something ancient, patient, something that didn't feel in the ways we understand. He didn't enjoy pain for its own sake. He studied it, measured it, recorded it. He had a method. Everything was labeled, timed, cataloged. Each woman, each victim, was a chapter. Their fears were footnotes, their deaths, punctuation. And me? I was the final act, the one who would understand it all before it ended. He wanted that, needed it. Not just someone to kill, but someone to witness, someone to know, someone who could see the monster clearly and name it before it dragged her under too. He spoke to me that night, not in words, but in silence, in glances, in the click of the door locking behind him. He poured wine like it was a date, sat across from me like nothing was wrong. I don't remember what I said. I just remember the weight of the realization pressing into my spine like a knife. I would not leave this house alive. But it wouldn't be fast. That wasn't his way. He would talk to me, study me, peel me open slowly. He wanted to know what love felt like when the illusion was shattered, what fear tasted like when it bloomed out of betrayal. He wanted to see when I broke, what sound I'd make, what my eyes would do in the final second before the light went out. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, was that part of me still looked at him and saw the man I had loved. The man who brought me coffee in bed, who kissed my forehead and whispered my name like it mattered. That mask was still there, just inches above the horror, and it made everything blur, made me question what was real, made me wonder if maybe I could still reach him, but I couldn't, because there was no him, just it, the thing behind the eyes, the thing that watches, waits, wears kindness like a coat, a monster that never needed claws or fangs or snarls, just charm, just silence, just time. The first thing to go was sleep. It wasn't just insomnia. It was a kind of waking death. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the basement, the room, the photos, him. My body lay in bed, but my mind paced the walls, searching for a way out that didn't exist. I stopped dreaming, but I never felt awake either. I became a ghost in my own skin, drifting from room to room, eating cold food I couldn't taste, showering under scalding water just to feel something. Anything. Then came the nausea. It clung to me like a second skin. I'd gag brushing my teeth, choke at the scent of coffee. My body was rejecting reality, trying to purge something it couldn't process. I lost weight fast. My jeans hung off my hips like they belonged to someone else. My reflection was a stranger, a thin, pale, wide-eyed thing with bruises under her eyes and lips that never closed all the way, always slightly parted like she was about to scream. But worse than the physical decay was what happened inside. My mind stopped being mine. I couldn't think in straight lines anymore. My thoughts came in flashes, quick, sharp images like broken glass. His face, the cold concrete floor, a girl's red scarf hanging from a hook, my name scribbled beside someone else's on a list, the words, "Final piece," written in his handwriting. I'd hear them even when I was alone, like a chorus just beneath the silence, whispering over and over again. I tried to work. I tried to write. I opened my laptop 100 times and stared at the blank screen until tears blurred the light. Nothing came out. The words were dead. I was dead. The stories I once told seemed childish now. Cheap imitations of what real horror was. This wasn't a mystery to solve. This was a sentence, and I was already serving it. I stopped calling friends. They stopped calling back. I lied and said I was sick, busy, overwhelmed. I couldn't bring myself to tell them what I'd seen, what I knew. Because saying it out loud would make it more real. Because if I told them, I'd have to decide whether to run or report. And neither of those options felt like they'd save me. Some nights I sat in the corner of my bedroom with the lights off, clutching my phone like a lifeline I was too afraid to use. I would stare at his number in my contacts, my thumb hovering over delete, but never pressing it. Part of me still needed to know he was there. Part of me thought if I could just understand him, I'd survive him. Like logic could be armor. Like curiosity wouldn't be the blade that finished me. I started locking every door twice, then thrice. I moved furniture in front of windows. I bought a knife, then another, then pepper spray. But none of it made me feel safer. Because the real prison wasn't outside. It was inside. He had moved in, nested in my spine, rearranged my brain. I was no longer afraid of him finding me. I was afraid he never left. I became obsessive. Every voice on the street made me flinch. Every creak in the hallway felt like footsteps. I stopped sleeping entirely. I'd sit at my desk at 4 a.m., reading articles about trauma, survivor guilt, psychopathy. I wasn't reading to learn. I was reading to prove to myself I wasn't crazy, that what I felt was real, that monsters didn't need horns and flames, that sometimes they wore sweaters and smelled like cedarwood cologne. I started seeing myself in the photos, those hidden, cataloged trophies he kept in the basement. I could feel the weight of the camera lens, the chill of the room, the pulse of terror in my throat. My imagination filled in the blanks, and soon it didn't matter what had actually happened. My mind had made it real. It etched itself into my bones. I couldn't undo it, couldn't go back. The worst was the silence. Not the absence of noise, but the absence of validation. No one knew what I knew. No one saw what I saw. I screamed in silence, over and over, but no sound left my body. And I started to wonder if I had imagined it all. If maybe I had snapped. If maybe he had been real and kind, and I had rewritten him because I was broken. That's what he would want me to believe, wasn't it? But then I'd remember the photo with my necklace in it, the one I never gave him. The one I hadn't seen in years. And the cold would return. That perfect, suffocating cold that only truth can bring. The truth that he was still out there, smiling, writing, charming someone else. And I was here, in pieces. My body was a shell. My mind a maze with no exit. I wasn't just traumatized. I was erased and redrawn in his image. I had seen the devil up close, not in a scream, but in a smile. And I knew I would never be whole again. It's been 94 days since I left his house. I counted each one with the desperate precision of a survivor tracking time in captivity. And still, every time I close my eyes, I feel the air in that basement. Heavy, wet, too still. I smell the iron, the sweat, the rot buried beneath bleach. I hear the metallic click of a latch locking behind me. I hear it even when I'm awake. Moved across the country. Different time zone, different job, different name on the mailbox. I rent a small apartment on the 3rd floor of a building with no elevator. It's ugly and old and anonymous. That's the point. I've papered over my life with lies and new habits. No social media. No press contacts. I stopped writing completely. The last article I published was about ethical journalism. The irony of that sickens me now. I don't tell anyone what happened. I don't have to. They see it in my eyes. I taped blackout curtains over the windows. I keep all the lights on, even when I sleep, especially when I sleep. I bought a dozen locks for the front door. I check them every night in the same sequence. Deadbolt, chain, bottom latch, and then I wedge a chair under the handle. My therapist says I'm developing obsessive behaviors. She doesn't know that the alternative is letting the fear in. He was never arrested. I never went to the police. I had no evidence, just photographs, stories, impressions burned into my brain. But nothing admissible, nothing that would stick. And I knew if I came forward, he'd find me again. Finish what he started. No. I made a choice, one I can't unmake. I stayed silent. I disappeared. Sometimes I wonder what he's doing now. If he's moved on to someone new. If she looks like me. If she's smarter, stronger, more suspicious. If she's already found the door. Already walked down the stairs. Already taken the first step toward never being the same again. I picture her standing in that basement, lit only by the blue buzz of a dying bulb, looking up at the wall and realizing she's not the first, that she won't be the last. I've tried to let it go. I've tried to reclaim normal. But normal is dead. Killed in that house. Buried in that floor. Now, I live in fragments. I speak less. I flinch more. I trust no one. I scan every face in a crowd. I watch the shadows. I memorize the license plates on parked cars outside my building. There's always one I don't recognize. Always one that lingers too long. Always one with windows too tinted to see who's inside. One night, last week, I came home and found a note under my door. It wasn't handwritten. Just a scrap of printed paper with one sentence in bold font. I liked the red dress best. I hadn't worn that dress since our third date. I burned it in the sink. The smoke filled my apartment and triggered the alarms. The neighbors knocked, but I didn't answer. I was too busy smashing every mirror in the house. I didn't want to see myself. I didn't want to see him in my face anymore. Now I sleep with a knife under my pillow and a hammer under the bed. I know he's out there, watching, waiting. Maybe he never stopped. Maybe he never will. That's the worst part, not what he did, but that it's not over, that it never will be. Because once you've danced with the devil, you carry his fingerprints on your soul forever. Tonight, I saw a silhouette outside my window. Just standing there, not moving. The streetlight flickered behind it. I couldn't see the face. I didn't need to. I knew. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just sat there in the middle of the room, all the lights on, the knife in my hand, the memory of the basement crawling up my spine like ice. And I waited.